But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third off the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know, I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in store, and exclusive access to sold out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello! Welcome along to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. It's the podcast where I speak to bands and artists about making it all work, building their own worlds, building their own scenes. The kind of chat that Sam Bentley from the Paper Kites is perfect for. The Paper Kites are a folk rock band from Melbourne in Australia, formed in 2010. They've released 2 EPs, 6 albums. Their first ever single, Bloom, was certified platinum in 6 countries, and they've got millions of listeners across the world. They've just released their new album, At the Roadhouse, following a sold-out Euro UK tour, playing at Edmonton Folk Festival, Calgary Folk Festival, and they're just a living organism of a band. Chatting to Sam about the design of the Paper Kites and how his personality kind of propelled the band and how they do everything was really interesting. He's a really lovely guy, had a really lovely chat, all about Melbourne, some about punk, and of course, some good stories from old jobs, some classic scrapes from former employment. Thank you so much for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. If you like this show, if you like this episode, please consider leaving a review or rating it. Even better, as good as all of that, is simply subscribing. Clicking that subscribe button does so much for me in the show. My end of the deal is at least 2 episodes every week with incredible, interesting artists. So if you're able to subscribe or even leave a review and rate it on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, that would be massively, massively appreciated. Thank you. Before we get into this episode, I'm going to speak with Rebecca from the band Eka, who is a brand ambassador for Ampolo, which is a free app. You can download it now. If you want to practice along with an existing song, you say you want to play bass to Rage Against the Machine, but you want to play along with it, you can take the bass out and practice along just like that. I think Rage Against the Machine is my... Bomb Track was the first song I learned to play on bass. That first song you learn, it stays with you, doesn't it?
I remember mine, which was Just Like a Prayer on saxophone. But yeah, I mean, I used to play that for hours, like trying to get it right alongside the CD player.
You sat there trying to rewind, get it to the right point.
Playing along kind of with the vocal. It's great for kind of doing covers and just learning the songs, basically.
And that's on Ampolo. It's free. Anyone can download it now on the App Store. You can record yourself so you can see how you're looking when you play it. Make sure your tongue's not sticking out when you're trying to play some riffs. Happy practicing. All right, so here's Sam Bentley from the Paper Kites here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Cheers. 101 Part-Time Jobs.
You know, even back in those sort of school days, and I would say, at least for me, incredibly uneducated as to where I would end up going in terms of what I listened to and the kind of music that I connected with. You know, back then it was all just loud music. All I wanted to do was, like, you know, it was chaos. You wanted chaos at the shows you went to and the music you listened to. And I mean, you're sort of saying, like, you know, you stopped playing sports and going to gigs. I mean, I wasn't particularly sporty, but, you know, I remember going to, like, gigs at that age. I saw a band, I loved this band, a band called The Living End.
Yeah.
Who are like a rockabilly punk band.
I know, I've seen them. Double bass. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Scott Owen would, like, stand up on his bass. And it was like a free show in the city at a record store. And I was like maybe 14 or something like that. And I took the train after school into the city to see this show with some friends. And I remember it was so full, and there was this line down the street. But, you know, we were kind of little school grommets, so we could just kind of sneak in. But there was just this wave of people that couldn't get into the store that was just kind of heaving and pushing against security until... I don't know how it happened, but they all just kind of pushed through, and the store, like, you could not move in this store. And everyone started, like, I mean, this was, again, like, very early 2000s. So they still had CDs in the stores, and people were ripping the CDs off the walls and stamping on them. And the whole store got absolutely trashed.
Oh, damn.
And that was my first show that I ever went to. The chaos and the attitude to it all, I was really drawn to for some reason.
Well, it's not normal life, is it? You're like, this is something different.
And, you know, like, I think as I finished my school years and kind of thought that was the direction I wanted to go, and I have talked about this before, I kind of had this very steep learning curve when I was going to music university, realizing that I didn't know much about songwriters. You know, I kind of knew the bands that I liked, and that was about it. But I think when you start mixing with people that you probably consider a little more cultured in regards to music of the world, you realize you don't know too much, and all of a sudden there's this hunger to educate yourself. Yeah. So whilst I have a love for, you know, chaos and music that kind of brings out that side of people and performance and in the audiences as well. I found myself drawn to folk music and to singer-songwriters. And, you know, once I delved into that world, I found it very hard to go back. I think because I'd reached an age where that music just made more sense to me. I was feeling the same things, and I understood it, and I couldn't go back and sort of play in my little punk band and sort of, you know, play those shows feeling like I was doing something important. You know, it just didn't feel like it was resonating with anybody. No one was really listening. Like, people were just there to have a good time, and you know, that's great, but I don't know, there's something about that music that speaks to people, because it is so character driven, and it's narratives, and it's you know, the very simplest way of expressing one's feelings, and it's so accessible for anybody. So yeah, I had this very big shift that just completely pulled me into that world.
Who are those people? I'm thinking it might be Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, Leonard Cohen for sure. And you know, these are all guys and gals, you know, like Joni Mitchell, of course, Neil Young, Nick Drake, like the Beatles. I didn't know enough about the Beatles. I knew a few songs, but I you know, I was embarrassed at how little I knew about them. And
I think it happens because they're such a ubiquitous kind of, you know, you see them on t-shirts before you ever, I mean, look, when you're 5 years old now, you'll see the Beatles logo about 100 times before you've heard any song. And I don't know how many parents are playing their kids Yellow Submarine these days. When I was a kid, you know, my parents would play us that as nursery rhymes. But my point is like, they're a caricature of a band until you, at some point, usually maybe in your adult life, nothing wrong with that, you actually take the time yourself to listen to the White Album or Sgt. Pepper's or whatever it is for yourself.
Yeah, and I think, you know, they are one of those acts that, I don't know, I've heard some people kind of speak negatively about them, perhaps because of the way that they were kind of the modern day manufactured boy band of their era at the beginning. But, you know, I feel like their journey was
Hamburg doing Speed.
That's right. But their transition as artists and songwriters in their own right as well, you know, like George and John and Paul, and I mean even Ringo as well. Like, it's I don't know, I just don't understand how you can not appreciate their music. For me, it was just like I delved into every one of their records, and it blew my mind. Like, how can one group write so many great songs in such a small amount of time as well? So, and
Paul McCartney doesn't play the same bass line twice in any song.
No,
it's pretty unreal.
Insane. It's insane. Yeah, he's a national treasure. Real national treasure.
People who outwardly say they don't like the Beatles, they're haters. They want to be cool. They want to seem cool for hating on something that everyone else.
I just don't understand it, man. I'm like, there's too many good songs. If you care about music and you care about songwriting, how can you say you don't like the Beatles, you know?
So you were in Melbourne, you grew up in the suburbs of Melbourne, you were going into town, you got your culture from Melbourne, you feel like you're a Melbourne kid.
I guess so, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I've always kind of lived out in the suburbs. Like, even right now, I'm not too far from where I grew up as a kid. And that's still like, you know, a 40-minute train ride into the city. So I live in Melbourne, I grew up in Melbourne, but you know, the city culture doesn't really resonate with me that much. You know, I grew up in the suburbs, so it was kind of different. It was a lot quieter.
Were you going in for gigs and going out? Like,
yeah.
Because you got a few local, like, independent venues and bars, right, where people generally, you know, it seems like congregate and find out new cool stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of like amazing venues, legendary venues that were big then and are still around now, you know, like the Tote, and places like the Northcote Social Club, where we kind of played for the first time as a band. Yeah, so, you know, we were heading in to catch gigs, but it was always a journey to get into the city, you know. It was either the train or someone would drive in, because it wasn't like, it took a little bit to get in there.
There's a thing about being from the suburbs, because you see where the action is and you're close enough to go to it, but then you come home, and I think there's a mindset of that, right? Because you're building your own thing. You know, you're like, city kids can be a bit like scary when you're younger, and I wonder if there's like there's a thing where you're like, okay, well, I feel like there's more of a push to kind of be like, build your own little world, you know?
I suppose you are a product of, firstly, the music that you listen to, but then when you go and see live music, you kind of get a feel of you know, what's going on and what's kind of happening, the pulse of the moment. But I mean, Melbourne is so eclectic, it always has been, with the scenes, and you can really find any kind of genre there, and there is a scene for it. But you know, for me, I started playing with Christina in just local like cafes and wine bars, just because we didn't know where else to play. You know, we were kind of like starting to write a little bit, but it was really just kind of covers and things like that, and we'd get paid with a meal or very little amount of money, but it was, you know, it was experience, and it was kind of, we enjoyed it. But we didn't really know about like the folk scene in Melbourne, if there even was a folk scene at that point, because it was still kind of coming off the back of I don't know, there was like a weird kind of phase. I'm just thinking like the sort of early 2000s to 2010. I don't even know what was sort of in at that time, but not long after that there was this big folk revival, and these acts were coming along in Australia. Like you had Angus and Julia Stone, and you had the Waifs and bands like that was sort of, you know, holding the torch for everyone else. I mean, singer-songwriters have always been around. Paul Kelly's kind of our Bob Dylan equivalent. He's very well loved and has always done that kind of thing. I mean, you've got guys like Nick Cave that are revered and sort of on the darker side that have always been doing their thing. But we just didn't know where our people were. We didn't know where that scene was, and so we kind of were just navigating it as best we could, playing the kind of places that we thought they would play. But, you know, I think eventually when we sort of pulled in the other guys and turned it into a bit of a band, we just realized there's not really much of a scene for what we want to do. And I think we're going to have to sort of create it ourselves, because we couldn't really connect in with any bands that were doing similar things, or they were just at an unreachable level for us starting out where we were. So yeah, I think we felt like we knew what we wanted to do, but it was just, there was a bit of a lack of community at that point. So we kind of thought, well, we're just gonna do it anyway and kind of try and be our own scene and see if we can make it that way. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
Isn't it mad? It's such a untangible thing, because the reality of it is that, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but you and Stina will be playing these cafes, and the majority of people, you know, maybe might not be interested. You're maybe not completely happy with like the performance or the songs you've written yet, but you're only going to get to where you want to go by carrying on. So that it becomes this kind of idea, potentially delusion, that you have to kind of believe this thing in order to give yourself the best opportunity to do it. I was thinking last night before bed, when I was 15, all I wanted to do was tour. By the time I was 19 or 20, I'd done 2 or 3 tours, and that was just out of this world for me. And it's funny how quickly, you know, within a year or two, these crazy ideas can become reality.
Were these tours that you did, like, were you touring mostly around the UK?
Oh, it was around the UK, and to nobody who really cared. But that didn't matter. And I think, you know, when you talk about, you know, finding your scene and creating your own scene, I find it's so fascinating how now you can look on your Instagram or look out at gigs and be like, you know, you'd recognize certain groups of people. Like, where do those people come from? You know what I mean? What are their stories of discovering you? That's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things you kind of mentioned that got me thinking, because I'm often talking about resilience, and if people are kind of asking about advice for young writers and people sort of starting out bands for the first time, it's that really, isn't it? Because working in music, you really do have to have a thick skin. I mean, there is a degree of I suppose delusion to it as well. Like, you really do have to believe that, you know, you've got something to say and what you have to offer is better than, you know, what anyone else has to offer.
You back yourself.
And that's right. You do. And so thinking back to those cafe days, I mean, we weren't anything special. Like, we were just another guy and a girl singing in a cafe. Every now and then, you know, you would get a little clap or a little nod from someone, but really we were playing to no one, and we were playing to people that couldn't really care less. So, but there was still that, I don't know if you call it an ego, like what do you call that makes you go from playing to rooms when no one cares, but knowing like, nah, I think we can really make this work, and I think this is going to be something that people are going to pay attention to. There's something about that kind of I mean, it is ego, isn't it? Like, it is just or some sort of self-confidence or something in knowing that, you know, you have the resilience to be able to push past that. And look, it is a whole contributing bunch of factors that, you know, allow you to push to the next level, and it is about opportunities, and it is about networking, but I mean, it's also about I guess a great deal of of self-belief in what you do. But you know, you just get knocked back so many times, and there are so many various forms of heartbreak and disappointment that you have to navigate as an artist, as a human being, because I can't think of many other jobs that you are being so vulnerable all the time, and I guess having to deal with you know, putting out so much of yourself and your heart and your thoughts and feelings, and either people don't care or they don't respond to it in the way that you think they should, or you don't receive the kind of support that you thought you would. It's just constant things that can very much darken your experience or your expectations, and you just need to develop a thick skin. You really do, because there's no other way to navigate it.
There's that enjoyment, you know, if you enjoy something, doing it enough to carry on, right? And you're so out of control. You're not in control of what other people are going to think of your if you have like a hit record, then you know, you might, then the one after people might not like, then the one after that people love again. It seems like a real roller coaster. I mean, I wonder, one of the things that helps with that, and also something that you fucking need, is time to grow, time to think, okay, yeah, maybe I can write better than what I wrote last year, time to practice your instrument, time to go on tour, time to sit with yourself. I mean, you know, with the 101 part-time jobs thing, you know, yeah, it's about side hustles and working at cafes and bars, trying to make it work and pay for studio time. There's also like it's 101 jobs in trying to make it work for yourself, because it's not always the big moments. It's not like, okay, this week we make the record, next week we go on tour, the week after that we go demo the next one. There's millions of little stepping stones between those, right?
That's right. And I think you are very, very spot on with saying it. The time is so very, very important, because, you know, you do need time to understand yourself and what you want to say and how you want to say it, and also time to digest the world, digest the things that, you know, inspire you, and how you want to translate that in an artistic form. But I know for me, I was just thinking about some of the jobs that I had. I worked at a cinema for quite a while. And this was at a point where the band was actually doing pretty well. Like, we were touring quite a lot. it was almost at a point where I could have lived off it. But so in some regards, I didn't really have to work at a cinema, but I just wanted to because I loved the environment and I loved film and I just wanted to be around it. So
Yeah.
I just kind of took on a job there. The people there didn't really know what I did. You know, I'd kind of get back from a month-long tour and they're like, kind of, how was your little trip? Oh, yeah, it was, you know, it was fun. I go and make some popcorn or something, you know. And I was there for quite a while, maybe like 3 or 4 years. And I'd be cleaning the cinemas after people had been in there. And there's just so much space and time to yourself and time to think. And I think I ended up writing 2 of our records while I was kind of working there in that space.
Which records?
And I wrote On the Train Ride Home and On the Corner Where You Live, those 2 records while I was working at the cinema. And I mean, I certainly credit like time and space to those albums because I don't think I would have been able to do it had I not had time to step back and to reassess what I was wanting to do. I'm not one of those writers that writes all the time. I can't do that. I have to stop every now and then. I'll write a record and then I won't really pick up a pen for like another 12 months, sometimes 2 years, until I feel like I'm ready to do it again. You know, I respect the craft. I totally understand people that feel like they need to be writing all the time because it is something that can be honed and can be perfected if you kind of do it more and more. But, you know, with songs, you're giving so much of yourself. It's exhausting, at least for me, writing a record because it's such a concentrated period of intensity and getting everything out that I feel like I need to get out. And then I don't want to do it again at the end of that. And so time and space is so important to the creative endeavor of you know, trying to work out what you're doing. You know, I just think the whole time concept really resonates with me. I think for a lot of people that I know that are songwriters, people do it differently. You know, some people are constantly writing and constantly sort of chipping away at you know, trying to write that great song, and other people are similar to me. They don't do it unless they feel like they want to do it. And I think every way of doing it has its benefits, and it's just how I like to work.
101 part-time jobs. 101 part-time jobs. When you have that much time between songs or records, writing them, how do you keep your cup full? You know, because if you in the space between, because when you're writing, you've got a real fucking reason to be, right? This is my fucking raison d'etre. You know, you have a glass of wine, you're like, I've done that thing today. I've filled myself up. You know, you get that buzz, you get that like that low hum frequency when you've had a good day. When you're not writing, how do you keep that up on a personal level, on like a Sam level?
I don't know if I necessarily feel like I have to keep it up. Like it's not something that I'm aware of or feel like it's lacking in any way. It's just, I don't know. I kind of get a lot of fulfillment out of mundane things. It probably sounds strange. I kind of watch people a lot.
Yeah, hey.
I like to observe. And I get a lot of enjoyment from just kind of observing life and observing what's going on around me.
Do you ever worry that you stare? I'm projecting my own anxiety.
I stare all the time. Yeah, all the time. But it's, you know, when we're on the road, I will always try and, you know, walk in the mornings when I wake up, or even after a show. There's been plenty of shows I've just hit the pavement like as soon as we got off stage, and, you know, put the headphones in and listen to any particular record, and I draw a lot of inspiration from that. I don't know why exactly. I think just there's something about observing the humanness of everyone else and what's going on around you. Something encouraging and comforting about it. Especially when my life right now isn't particularly dramatic. It's quite nice, and I'm really happy, and there's not a lot of drama to draw from. And that's not to say that I'm looking for other people's drama to draw from either. It's just I don't know. I think with everything I do and everything I write, I'm just looking for the humanity of it all, and just trying to, connect with people because of shared experiences. I'm not trying to push the envelope on things that haven't been done before, things that haven't been said before. I'm just trying to, I don't know, say things or sing things or write things in a way that can be understood. And I think that's something that can be a little overlooked or underrated with songwriting is folk music and singer-songwriters can perhaps in some of their circles, some of the musical circles, be a little looked down upon because of the simplicity of it all. But it really is sometimes the simple songs that are the most effective, I've found. And that's why certain songs of ours have gone beyond what I ever thought they could, because, I don't know, people have just been able to access them. They're not so complicated or so, I don't know, like aimed at a certain demographic that they don't work for everybody. And I always say, like, when people ask, what kind of music do you play? I say, my mum likes it. So, it's all right for everyone.
There's an obsession that we have, and I do it, and I try and remember that everything's actually like a living organism. Everything's its own breathing thing that's like changing every day. I think I can be quite bad with waking up and being like, oh, not another day. And then I have to check myself quite quickly and be like, today's different than yesterday. But it makes me think people love to package things up. People love to say, oh, this is that. Oh, this is, it's like an academic view of music, where there's a right answer. I'm not a right answer kind of person. I'm like, I'll just let it fucking be. And if you connect to it, you connect to it. Especially with music, when you hear a song, when someone hears a song, like they connect it to their life or what they're going through in it, connects on a range of sort of power, or like how powerfully that it affects them. Like, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to like write music. There's some stuff you like more than others. Some stuff you love, something else you might never listen to again. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I think for that very reason, that's often why I'll shy away from kind of interpreting songs when people ask me what they're about, or when they ask me about my influences and things like that. I don't know, I kind of avoid it because of that reason. I think that people like to try and put things in a box or make sense of things. If they kind of know these are your influences for this record or for this song, then that allows them to say, oh, well, it's just this.
Yeah.
Instead of just hearing it for what it is. You don't need to necessarily understand why every line was written or what it was written for. If it makes sense to you and it means something and it connects with you, then I don't think you need an explanation. No. You don't need to know the whys or the hows or the intricacies of how it came together. You just, when a song works for you, and I think that's all you need, really.
Big time.
So yeah, I always try and shy away from that if I get asked.
It feels like bursting the bubble a little bit, doesn't it? It feels like deflating it, because
a little bit.
The magic is in the moment, and when you have an amazing moment with your friend or your partner or your family member or by yourself, when you have a moment, let it breathe. Let it be.
That's right. And people are so much smarter than I think some consumers like to think that they are, and especially when it comes to art and when it comes to music and film and just any kind of creation. People are so much smarter than you think that they may be. And so
emotional intelligence.
That's right. And the idea of mystery has been maybe a little degraded over time. You know, people are asking for more now, more content, more explanation. I don't know, and that kind of rubs me up the wrong way, if you don't mind that expression, because I mean, I think mystery is one of the great beauties of art. You know, I don't want to know everything. I want to work it out for myself, or at least interpret it myself, and I don't need an explanation. I can hear it, or I can see it, or you can feel it for sure, and I don't know, I think that's enough for me, and I think that it should be enough for other people. I don't like the idea of having to explain your work. You know, I really would rather credit people with more intelligence than that.
When I think about talking about music, I think of that kind of, you know, stoned listening to the Velvet Underground for the first time. I actually got into Velvet's way too late, but
as did I.
I'm, you know, lucky to kind of have siblings where we're like, oh, this song is sick. It just makes me feel so good. And you don't need to be smart. I don't need to use big words. You know, I can be kind of like dumb. You know, I can be like, this song makes me feel good. This song makes me want to dance. I love those kinds of conversations. My girlfriend is all about that. I feed so much off of that stuff.
I mean, there's music for every feeling, right? I mean, you know, if you want to feel a certain way, there's always kind of a whole bunch of go-to bands that you can use for that. And I always find it like there's this thing that I do where I look at those bands, like, you know, not necessarily like the Velvet Underground, but you know, for example, like Amyl and the Sniffers or something like that. You know, like a band that's kind of really just rocking out and having a good time, and I think, man, I wish I could be doing that. You know, like, why am I playing folk music? I don't really feel that, because, you know, at the heart of it, that's like the ultimate, you know, the purest expression of myself. I think it comes down to that. But, you know, I think you're drawn to the things that maybe you don't or you can't do, or I'm not sure what it is, but I'm always drawn to the bands that sound nothing like what I do.
Right.
But I love that. I love that kind of music that makes you, again, maybe it comes back to the chaos thing, but I'm drawn to it. Sometimes I'm drawn to, you know, just something that really thrashes my mind, or something that's really dark, like so much darker than the kind of music that I make. But yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on the kind of person that you are and what you gravitate to in terms of the music and how you want it to make you feel. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what I decided to kind of put out, I guess as a genre, I think our music is, like I said before, I think it's not too complicated, and that's probably why, or too alienating either. You know, there are certain genres of music that can be quite polarizing, which I like that, but I don't do that myself. So I don't know what it is, but I think I just wanted to try and you know, find a way of communicating that was able to reach across I suppose different backgrounds and different experiences, and so that's sort of what I landed on in terms of why our music is or sounds the way it does, because I think that it kind of works in a lot of different ways. But I'm certainly drawn to things that I can't do
madness.
or choose not to do. The madness. I'm drawn to the madness.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs. Was it a fairly steady road for you? You mentioned working at the cinema, but I guess before then, when you were doing your first tours, was there that kind of tussle between you and where you were at that moment in time and where you wanted to be? Was there a bit of a fight there?
At least a few of us had played in bands previous to this band that, I mean, I guess to put it plainly, it hadn't really gone where we hoped it could go. I mean, they were really enjoyable bands to play in, but I don't know if we were honest with ourselves. I can only speak for myself, not necessarily the other guys and their experiences, but you know, I think I probably knew that it wasn't going to be the vehicle that was going to take me anywhere further than kind of the local scene. And it certainly wasn't the kind of music that was going to, I don't know, that I think once I had kind of tapped into what was out there a little more and realized how much I'd sheltered myself from what was out there. You know, I just knew that wasn't really going to work for me. So I think the transition happened then, really. For a lot of us kind of starting this band, we were coming into it really knowing what we did want to do and what we didn't want to do. So it was quite a united vision, really based on I mean, this is probably an unkind way to say it, and not necessarily the most truthful telling of the story, but you know, based on failures of various sorts. Like we hadn't really been able to live off our previous work and kind of those sort of bands. It was, you know, about playing and having fun with friends, and it was amazing for what it was. But you know, I think when you kind of have that conversation, and then they all happened in various ways, and they're hard conversations to have, especially with your friends, when you're sort of saying like, either I don't have passion for this anymore, or I don't see this going anywhere. You know, they're really difficult conversations to have. And so I think we all had to have those conversations in different ways with our brothers in our bands and things like that. And so we came into this band not necessarily knowing where it would take us, but knowing where we didn't want to go, and I suppose the trappings of the local scene that we didn't want to fall into. So it was a strange way to start, but we had certainly wrestled for a lot of years in other bands that hadn't, you know, I'm going to say make it. Like, we didn't make it, I guess. But that's so broad and it's so subjective to what you define as success. But I guess looking back now and some of the experiences that we've been fortunate enough to have, you know, experiences that we never had even dreamed of when we started this band, then you could definitely say that we had probably slogged it out in our younger years. And that was the period of, I don't know, like, that was the struggle. Yeah. Because as soon as we started this band, it wasn't a struggle. You know, we knew exactly what we wanted to do. And it was things like, we're not going to play every weekend to nobody. Like, we're going to play maybe twice a year in Melbourne at least. And let's like make this something that people want to come to, because I think that we're good enough. And so we did it exactly like that. We started...
You held to your guns with that.
That's right, and every time we would try and push a little bigger and a little further. It was almost like that whole, let's pretend that we're bigger than we are for a little bit and see what happens. And we'd always go for a bigger play each time, a bigger venue. We wouldn't necessarily sell it out, but we'd keep pushing each time. And so the venues were growing. And then all of a sudden we'd got to this point where we'd sold out a Melbourne venue called the Corner Hotel, which is maybe 850 people or something. And that was just off our own backs. We had no help, no support or anything.
You booked it yourself?
It was just... We booked it ourselves, we promoted it ourselves, and it was all just word of mouth. And that was the first show I remember coming out and thinking, I don't know anyone at this show. Usually it's friends, there's so-and-so, and, it's a room full of our friends. But that was the first show. I was like, this is really something else. I don't know a single person in this room. And I think it's those sort of decisions and pushing in that kind of way that this band has always been that way. We've always been very confident in what we do and how we want to present ourselves. And like I said about that whole creating our own scene and trying to draw people into that, I also feel like that's what we've always been able to do. So, the struggles came before we started this band in order for us to know how to be a real band.
Hey, Sam, thanks so much for being up for this chat. At the Roadhouse is such a great listen, and I love the story of, building a bar, building the perfect place for that kind of music. Just before, I want to end asking you some funny stories from old jobs, but that's one thing that I've read a bunch of interviews, seen it, listened to, read a bunch. But the one thing that I want to know is when you found that place, how much were you aware of being okay, we're going to build this place and it's going to be to our spec, it's going to be to our personality, it's going to be somewhere that we want to hang out, even from the decorations to the tables to the lighting, that's going to be the sound of the Paper Kite's new record. Did that idea start as a seed and grow? Was it a big idea to start with?
It was an idea that kind of changed a little over time into what it became, but the very original idea of the record, and this was back when we'd written the Roses album, so this idea has been floating around for quite a while, but the idea was to tour a bunch of kind of really terrible dive bars and just play as a house band and kind of make a record through touring various, terrible places. I don't know, there was something about it that just seemed really funny and really fun to me.
Well, to kind of feed off that kind of barfly environment.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, hopefully, run into some situations where we got heckled and people yelled at us. And, I love that kind of thing, man. I really enjoy it. So that was the original idea, and we'd even thought maybe we could do it around America. There's some pretty dodgy places over there. That's kind of, it's the Wild West. That seems appealing. So we'd planned the tour. We found the venues. Venues are just in the middle of nowhere, and we were going to buy a car and we'd just sort of drive around and play it. And then COVID happened, and the whole thing just got put on the back burner. And we kind of talked about it all right, well, I don't think we can go and do this anymore, but maybe we could do it in Australia. But we kind of thought surely there's similar kind of places around the country. There's some very, very famous, very, very Australian pubs in the outback in the middle of nowhere as well. But they take so long to get to. We're talking even if you flew to Queensland, which is sort of a northern city, there's this one bar we were looking at playing. It's still another 20 hours drive west from there to get there. And I don't think you can fly there. You have to drive it. So, there were places that we could have played, but they were just scattered all over, and it was just going to be too difficult to do it that way. And also, I think I saw this film called Hotel Coolgardie. I believe that's the title. It's about these two backpackers from, I want to say from Sweden, that came to work in this Australian pub, and it's quite confronting, and it's very intense, and really kind of just highlights all the problems with pub culture in Australia, and the sexism and just the bullying, and it's really intense, and it just kind of made me be like, yeah, I don't think we actually want to go and play some of those places. Some of them are great, don't get me wrong, and a little bit, and you know, it just came to be that we just couldn't find the right place. You know, we didn't want that kind of vibe, and the sort of dive bar that we'd imagined didn't exist, and so we thought maybe we're not going to be able to do this thing until we caught wind of this venue in Campbell's Creek, and so we drove to check it out. It was only about 2 hours from Melbourne, and everything just started to kind of come together when we saw it. You know, there was talks of, we don't have to tour, you know, various pubs and bars. Like, why don't we just stay in the one place, and we can build this place that we'd been talking about playing in. Like, we can make it from the ground up, everything ourselves, and just open the doors to the community and play these shows and see who wants to come. So that is sort of how it started, and we knew that as soon as we'd found that venue, everything else was going to work, and it just came together so well after that.
Quality. So are you renting the place? Did you buy it?
No, so the behind the Roadhouse was a studio, and that was actually the initial reason that we'd come to see it. A friend of ours, Alex, runs a studio back there, very kind of residential. It's in an old barn that he and his dad had converted into this all analog studio. It's, you know, there's no heating or anything. It's all sort of like wood fires and things like that. And his family like owns the property. It's sort of been in their family since the 80s, I think. And there was this sort of vacant building at the front of the property. And he said, you know, like, this has been used for various things over the years. I think it was originally an old gold mining supply store. It was then a pub, but then there was a big fire there. But yeah, the structure had kind of survived, and they used it for random things every now and then, but it was owned by his family, but it wasn't used for anything. So he's kind of showed us through it, and we just thought, like, this is what we've been looking for. Like, brilliant. Can we use this space to turn into a venue? And Alex, to his credit, I mean, anyone could have said, no, I'm not really into that. He was just a real can-do kind of guy, and he said, yeah, like, whatever you need, let's do it. So
and we
spent the next couple of weeks gear.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so the recording gear, we kind of moved stuff to and from the studio. Some stuff we would record there, and then we would play the shows and kind of use the recording gear in the venue, like the microphones and all of that. So there was a lot of moving back and forth from the places, because we would like record during the week as well. We'd kind of get the band in the barn and just record there as well.
Brilliant.
And play these shows on Friday and Saturday nights, and you know, we didn't advertise it. We didn't really tell anyone that we were doing it, mainly because we didn't want Melbourne fans of the band driving up. We just wanted to keep it really local and just for the community there. And yeah, it just turned into this thing that I don't think any of us anticipated. It was really, honestly, and I've said this before, but it was so special, and it was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had playing music. Just, I think because it really took it back to those early days of really having nothing but your songs to try and connect with people, and they didn't really know us up there, and that was all part of it. Like, they didn't know the band. There was no expectations on how it should sound or the kind of show that we should do, and so the freedom that came with that, and I think the connections that were made with the community were just, it was magic. The whole experience was magic.
It sounds excellent. I've had some good walks to it. It's lowered my blood pressure.
Oh, great.
a few times. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
Hey, Sam, thanks so much for being up for this. Just to end with, I like hearing about people's kind of work fail stories, work gaff stories. I've always been someone who, like, my school reports always said that smart but doesn't apply themselves, doesn't pay attention, and that's definitely come with me into adult life. I've dropped things when I've been working at the pub, and generally don't listen to my boss and cause people a certain amount of stress. I wonder, everyone's different. Everyone's got their own everyone's got their own thing going on. What do you have any memories of funny times at work?
Oh man, I mean, I haven't had too many jobs, but the jobs I have had, there's always something. I mean, the cinema, you would always get strange things happening there. I mean, when you clean out the cinemas at the end, oh my God, some of the things you have to clean is very humbling and very
a couple really, of these Johnnies.
Yeah, well, I think kids are the worst, and there were a few situations like, this is coming off the back of a tour, so you're kind of so high on life and just like, oh man, feeling like a real rock star, at least for the first few days. And then you go and clean a cinema and some kids jam pasta down the seats and you've got to clean out the pasta with your hands. And, it brings you down pretty quickly. But the other Sam in the band, we call him Raz. So Raz and I used to work in a shoe factory, kind of moving boxes and packing orders for people. And it was just the worst job. Like, it really was. I only worked there because I wanted a car. And he was really in with the boss, the boss really liked him and the boss didn't like me so much. I think because I was always screwing around and we always got in trouble. But it was always me that seemed to get the the yelling from the boss, and Raz never seemed to. But we'd do stupid things all the time. Like, you would have to pack the orders at the end of the day, and they would be in kind of lines of boxes for the to go on the truck to go out to the stores. But we would hollow out boxes and sort of hide inside columns just to avoid having to work. And you'd be there for ages and the floorman's looking for you and everyone's in on it. No one's telling them that you're just sort of standing in the order pile in a thing of boxes, just screwing around with things like that. But yeah, it was one of those jobs that, so many dodgy environments. There was a guy that worked there that had some pretty serious anger issues, and we didn't care. We were always setting him off, like pulling pranks on him just to see how angry he got. And we were just little grommets. We didn't really care. And I got my car and I was out of there, man. So, there's a lot of bad jobs out there, and I was just lucky that I didn't have to work there my whole life.
Well, it's good to remember that if you can work a job and get the amount of money you aimed for, and then buy that thing that you wanted, or get that trip that you wanted to do.
That's right. That's right. And there were some. It was a very toxic work environment there, and there were a couple of guys, older guys, like old school guys, that just, you would never want to bring a girl around there, because some of the things they said, like, I kind of got into it with a guy one time, like, man, you need to learn some respect. Like, you cannot talk like that, and it just makes for a bad environment. So, I don't miss that place at all. And it's nice to be a young man walking away from that job as opposed to some of the sadder older guys that are kind of stuck in it. So, yeah. Anyway, it was a season. And
the taste of walking out your last day there with something like that is always a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess considering that music has kind of worked out now, it's probably a better feeling, if I think if it hadn't have worked out and I was back at the shoe factory, I would not be too happy. But I don't think that was ever going to happen.
Hey, Sam, thanks so much. I really appreciate the time for the long form chat,
No, you're welcome, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So there he was, Sam Bentley, here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. The Paper Kites' new album, At the Roadhouse, is out now. Amazing record. Really calms me down when I need it, you know? Cheers for listening to the episode. If you liked it, please consider leaving a review or rating or subscribing. All that stuff is amazing. I'll be back next week with new episodes with Delwater Gap, Cooler Shaker, and Radio X DJ and podcaster John Kennedy. I'll see you then.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.